The signal came at 3:47 hours, Earth Standard Time. Lieutenant Bay was tired. He had been sitting at his station for 11 hours, watching screens filled with nothing but static and routine traffic. The deep space relay station was quiet. It was always quiet. Nothing interesting ever happened this far from the core systems. Then his console beeped. Sat up straight. He put down his coffee and looked at the screen. A signal was coming through, weak and broken. He adjusted the filters and tried to clean it up. The words came slowly, piece by piece. Under attack, colony burning, children, please, anyone. Felt his blood go cold. He recognized the voice pattern. It was the species that had signed a protection treaty with Earth 30 years ago. They were peaceful beings. They had no army. They made art and music and raised their young in great nurseries that held thousands of larvae. And now they were screaming for help. Immediately sent the signal up the chain of command. Within minutes, it reached the desk of Admiral Park. The Admiral was in his quarters aboard the flagship Indomitable when the message arrived. He was reading old mission reports, unable to sleep as usual. Sleep had not come easy to him for many years. He had seen too much war, too much death. His eyes were gray like steel, and his face was lined with the weight of command. He listened to the signal 3 times, then he called for Captain. Arrived quickly. She was tall and sharp, with short black hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had served under for 5 years and knew him better than anyone. She could tell from his face that something was very wrong. "Listen to this," said. Listened. Her expression did not change, but her hands tightened into fists. Thus she said, "Do we know who is attacking them?" Nodded slowly. "Intelligence believes it is the Dominion." Closed her eyes for a moment. They were known throughout the galaxy. They were slavers. They took species they considered weak and sold them like cattle. They had been doing it for centuries, and no one had ever stopped them. The other galactic powers looked away because they were strong and because they only targeted species that could not fight back. Species like the... "How far is the colony?" asked. 3 days at maximum burn. And the... Pulled up a tactical display. It showed the colony world of 4 and the surrounding space. Warships were already in orbit. Slave transports were moving between the ships and the surface. "They are already loading prisoners," said quietly. "Every hour we wait, more are taken." Looked at the display. She knew what was coming. She had served with long enough to know how he thought, but she asked anyway. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Stood up. He walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, innocent beings were dying. Children were being torn from their mothers. Families were being broken and sold. "Full mobilization," he said. "The entire 7th Fleet. Every ship, every fighter, every Marine we have." Nodded. "They will not expect us to respond so quickly. They believe humans only protect their own kind. Then we will teach them otherwise." Within the hour, the 7th Expeditionary Fleet was in motion. 47 warships powered up their engines. 12 carriers released their fighter squadrons for pre-launch checks. 200 fighter pilots ran to their ships and strapped in. Marines loaded their weapons and checked their armor. The fleet was a thing of beauty and terror. Human ships were not elegant like some alien designs. They were brutal and efficient, built for one purpose: to destroy anything that stood against them. They were covered in weapons and armored in thick plates of reinforced steel. They looked like predators because that is exactly what they were. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched his fleet prepare. Around him, officers worked at their stations, coordinating the massive operation. Everything moved with perfect precision. This was what humanity did best. When threatened, when challenged, when their allies called for help, they responded with overwhelming force. Captain approached him. She had a tablet in her hand with the final readiness reports. "All ships report ready, Admiral. We can jump to hyperspace in 20 minutes. Nodded. "Good." hesitated for a moment. "Admiral, I need to ask. The Dominion is powerful. If we attack their forces, we may start a war. Should we not try diplomacy first? Perhaps we can negotiate for the release of the prisoners." Turned to look at her. His gray eyes were cold and hard. "They signed a treaty with us," he said. "They trusted us to protect them. They called for help and we heard them. There is nothing to negotiate. There is nothing to discuss. They are our allies and someone is hurting them. That is all I need to know." Understood. She had expected this answer, but she had needed to hear it. She nodded and turned to give the final orders. The fleet began to move. One by one, the great warships aligned themselves and activated their hyperspace drives. The stars stretched into lines of light, and then the ships were gone, racing through the void toward the colony. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Park stood alone at the viewport. He thought about the message they had received. The broken voice, the desperate plea. Somewhere ahead of them, innocent beings were suffering. Children were crying for their parents. Mothers were screaming as their families were torn apart. He had heard such sounds before, long ago. He had been too late to help then. He would not be too late now. Captain came to stand beside him. She said nothing for a long moment, just watched the strange lights of hyperspace swirl around the ship. "Do you think we can save them?" she finally asked. Did not answer immediately. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but filled with iron determination. "We will save as many as we can, and for those we cannot save, we will make the pay. Every life they have taken, we will take 10 of theirs. Every child they have stolen, we will burn one of their ships. They wanted easy prey. They chose the wrong allies to attack." Nodded slowly. "The galaxy will not understand. They will call us brutal, savage." Almost smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Let them. The prey on the weak, because no one ever makes them stop. Today, someone does. Today, they learn what happens when they touch those under Earth's protection." The fleet raced on through hyperspace. 3 days to 4. 3 days until battle. 3 days until the Dominion learned the terrible price of harming humanity's allies. On every ship, soldiers prepared for war. Pilots checked their fighters one more time. Marines sharpened their blades and loaded their guns. Officers studied tactical displays and planned their attacks. And in the depths of space, on a burning world, they continued to send their desperate signal. They did not know if anyone had heard them. They did not know if help was coming. But it was. Admiral Park stood on his bridge and made a silent promise to those distant voices. He would answer their call. He would come for them. And when he arrived, there would be no mercy for those who had hurt them. The stars continued to blur past the viewport. The fleet flew on. War was coming. The 7th Fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a hammer falling from the sky. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, his hands clasped behind his back. The viewport filled with the sight of 4, and what he saw made his jaw tighten with cold fury. The planet was burning. Great clouds of smoke rose from the surface, visible even from orbit. Cities that had once been beautiful were now ruins. They had built their homes with care and love, creating structures of crystal and living wood. Now those structures were nothing but ash and rubble. But worse than the destruction was what floated in orbit. Warships, dozens of them, surrounded the planet like vultures around a corpse. And between the warships and the surface, slave transports moved back and forth, carrying their terrible cargo. "Tactical report," said quietly. Captain studied her screens. 37 warships, Admiral, 15 slave transports. They are still loading prisoners from the surface. "How many remain on the transports?" "Check the sensor readings." "Unknown, sir. But based on the transport sizes and loading patterns, we estimate between 40 and 50,000. Closed his eyes for a moment. 40 to 50,000 innocent beings trapped in the holds of those ships, waiting to be sold, waiting to become property. "Sir," a communications officer called out, We are being hailed by the commander. Put it through. The main screen flickered, and a face appeared. There were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were black and empty, like holes in space. The commander wore elaborate armor decorated with the bones of conquered species. "I am Overlord," they said, his voice filled with amusement. "Commander of this acquisition force. You are human, yes. What are you doing so far from your own territory?" Did not respond immediately. He simply stared at the alien on the screen, his expression unreadable. Laughed. "Ah, I see. You have come for the insects. How touching. But I am afraid you have wasted your journey. The now belong to the Dominion. They will fetch excellent prices on the slave markets." "How many have you taken?" asked. Seemed surprised by the question. "The exact number, let me check." He consulted something off-screen. 47,216. A good haul. The larvae are particularly valuable. They can be trained from birth to serve. On the bridge, officers exchanged glances. Some of them looked sick. Others looked angry. Captain's face had gone completely cold like ice. Continued speaking. "Now, if you wish to purchase some of them back, I am sure we can arrange a reasonable price. The Dominion is always open to trade. Perhaps we can." Raised his hand, and the communications officer cut the signal. For a long moment, there was silence on the bridge. Every eye was on the admiral. 47,216, said softly. He turned to. "I want 47,000 dead before sunrise. Launch all fighters, all weapons free. No quarter, no surrender, no mercy." The orders went out across the fleet. And then hell came to 4. The first wave of human fighters screamed out of the carrier bays like angry wasps. Among them was Ensign, a young pilot on her first real combat mission. Her hands were shaking on the controls, but she kept her ship steady. "All wings form up on me," her squadron leader called. "Target the slave transports first. We need to stop them from jumping away with the prisoners." Fell into formation with the others. Her heart was pounding in her chest. She had trained for this for years, but training was not the same as reality. In training, no one actually died. They responded to the human attack with confusion. They had not expected this. In their experience, other species negotiated. Other species paid tribute. Other species looked away and pretended not to see. No one actually fought back. But humans were not like other species. The Indomitable led the charge, its massive guns tearing into the nearest warship. The alien vessel's shields flickered and failed. A second volley ripped through its hull, and the ship broke apart in a bloom of fire and debris. Watched it happen through her cockpit window. She felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. This was war, real war, and she was part of it. "Transport in sight," her squadron leader called. "All fighters attack run, disable the engines. We need those ships intact for rescue." Dove toward the transport, her fingers on the trigger. The transport was huge and ugly, a ship built only to carry slaves. She could not see the inside, but she knew they were there. Thousands of them, trapped and terrified. She fired. Her shots hit the transport's engines, and the massive ship shuddered. Around her, the other fighters added their fire, and soon the transport was drifting, powerless. "Good hits," the squadron leader shouted. "Move to the next target." Across the battlefield, the human fleet was tearing them apart. The aliens fought back, but their weapons were designed to intimidate, not to defeat a real enemy. Human ships were built for war, and they showed it. On the surface of 4, the Marines landed. Commander led the first wave. He was a big man with arms like tree trunks and a face that had seen 100 battles. His armor was indented from years of combat, but he wore those marks like medals. The landing zone was a ruined city. Soldiers were everywhere, dragging prisoners toward the remaining transports. When they saw the human Marines arriving, they opened fire. Did not slow down. He raised his rifle and began shooting, moving forward with steady, unstoppable purpose. His Marines followed him, a wave of armored fury that swept through the like a storm. "Rescue operations," ordered. "Secure the prisoners, kill anything that resists." The Marines spread out through the ruined streets. They found everywhere, huddled in the rubble, hiding in the shells of burned buildings. Some were injured, some were dying, all of them were terrified. But when they saw the human Marines, their fear turned to hope. One Marine found a group of children hiding in a collapsed nursery. Their caretakers had been killed, and the larvae were alone and afraid. The Marine carefully gathered them up and carried them to safety. Another Marine discovered a makeshift prison where they had been holding for transport. He blew the doors open and led the prisoners out, giving them water and food, and promising them that they were safe now. Commander found himself in the central plaza of the ruined city. Bodies lay everywhere, both and. In the middle of the plaza, a small group were making their last stand, surrounded by enemy soldiers. Did not hesitate. He charged into the ranks, his rifle blazing. His Marines followed. In less than a minute, every soldier in the plaza was dead. As the smoke cleared, a young child approached. She was small and fragile, her shell cracked and her antennae drooping with exhaustion. She looked up at the huge human Marine with wide, frightened eyes. Through his translator, heard her speak. "Why did you come?" Knelt down, bringing himself to her level. He removed his helmet so she could see his face. He was not a handsome man. His features were rough and hard, but when he spoke, his voice was gentle. "Because you called," he said simply, "and we always answer." The child reached out and touched his armored hand. Her fingers were small and delicate against the cold metal. "Will you stay?" she asked. Looked around at the burning city, at the bodies of the fallen, at the survivors slowly emerging from the ruins. Above them, the sky was filled with the lights of battle as human ships destroyed the last of the fleet. "Yes," he said, "we will stay, and we will protect you always." In orbit, Admiral Park watched the battle unfold. They were broken. Their ships were burning or destroyed. Their soldiers on the surface were being hunted down and eliminated. The slave transports had been captured, and rescue teams were freeing the prisoners. But it was not enough, not yet. Because Overlord was running. His command ship was fleeing toward the edge of the system, trying to escape into hyperspace. Captain appeared at side. "Admiral is attempting to retreat. Should we let him go? The battle is won." Watched the fleeing ship on his tactical display. His expression was stone. "No," he said. "The battle is won, but the war is not over. If we let him escape, he will do this again. To another colony, to another species. He will take more children, burn more cities, create more suffering." He turned to face directly. "Pursuit course. We follow him, we hunt him down, and we end him." Nodded slowly. "The crew will follow you, Admiral, but I must ask, where does this end?" Looked back at the burning planet below. Somewhere down there, Marines were rescuing the last of the survivors. Children were being reunited with their families. The dead were being counted and mourned. "It ends when they learn," he said quietly. "It ends when every slaver, every tyrant, every monster in this galaxy understands that attacking our allies is suicide. It ends when they fear us so much that they never dare try again." The Seventh Fleet turned away from 4 and began its pursuit. The hunt had begun. His command ship, the Dominator, tore through space at maximum speed. Behind him, the human fleet followed like wolves chasing wounded prey. Could not believe what had happened. One moment, he had been the master of a successful slave raid. The next, his entire fleet was burning. "Faster," he screamed at his crew. "We must reach space. They will not follow us there." But he was wrong. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the fleeing ship on his tactical display. The rest of the Seventh Fleet spread out behind him, a wall of steel and fury that would not be. "He is heading for the border," Captain reported. "If he crosses into territory, we will be in their sovereign space. It could be considered an act of war." Did not hesitate. "Then it will be an act of war. Maintain pursuit." Nodded and gave the orders. She had known this would be his answer. She had served with him long enough to understand how he thought. When Park committed to something, he did not stop halfway. The fleet crossed the border into space. Ship passed several outposts, but the humans did not care. When one outpost tried to challenge them, the Indomitable's guns reduced it to rubble without even slowing down. Word began to spread through the Dominion. The humans were coming and they were not stopping for anything. On the carrier ship, Ensign sat in the pilot-ready room with the other fighters. They had been flying for hours and everyone was exhausted, but no one complained. They had all seen what they had done to the. They had all seen the children being dragged to slave transports. They had all heard the screams. Stared at her hands. They were still shaking slightly. In the battle over 4 she had killed for the first time. She had watched ships explode, knowing that living beings were inside. It did not matter that those beings had been slavers. It did not matter that they had hurt innocents. She had still taken lives, and that weight sat heavy on her soul. Lieutenant Nam noticed her troubled expression. He was an older pilot, with gray at his temples and lines around his eyes. He had been flying combat missions for 15 years. "First battle is always the hardest," he said quietly, sitting down beside her. Looked up at him. "How do you do it? How do you live with it?" Was silent for a moment. "I remember why I fight. I think about the people I am protecting. Those children we rescued today, they will grow up free because we were here. Their parents will see them become adults. Their families will stay together. That means something." "But the killing." "War is not glorious," said. "Anyone who tells you otherwise is a liar or a fool. It is ugly and horrible and it leaves scars that never fully heal. But some fights are necessary. Some enemies cannot be reasoned with. They see other species as property to be bought and sold. They will never change. They will never stop, unless someone makes them stop." Thought about this. She thought about the little child she had seen Commander carrying from the ruins. She thought about the look of hope in that child's eyes when she realized she was safe. "So we are the ones who make them stop," said. Nodded. "We are the ones who make them stop, and we carry the weight of that so others do not have to." The hunt continued for 2 more days. Ship wound through asteroid fields and past dead worlds, trying desperately to shake the humans from his trail. But the 7th Fleet was relentless. Every time he thought he had escaped, they appeared behind him again. Every time he tried to hide, they found him. He destroyed several of his own ships trying to create obstacles. He sacrificed his escorts to slow the humans down. He begged other commanders for help, but none came. They were too afraid. The news of what had happened at 4 had spread, and no one wanted to face the human fleet. On the 3rd day, made his final mistake. He tried to hide near a gas giant, using the planet's magnetic field to mask his ship's signature. It was a clever move. It had worked against other enemies many times before. But humans had been hunting things for millions of years. They had evolved as predators on a dangerous world. They knew how prey tried to hide, and they knew how to find it anyway. "Contact," Captain announced. "The Dominator is hiding in the upper atmosphere of the gas giant. He thinks the magnetic interference will protect him." Admiral Park studied the tactical display. "Send in the fighters, flush him out. When he runs, we will be waiting." The fighter squadrons launched, Ensign among them. They dove into the swirling clouds of the gas giant, their sensors struggling against the interference. Lightning flashed around them, and powerful winds buffeted their ships. But they found him. "Target acquired," the squadron leader called. "All fighters attack run." The fighters swarmed the Dominator, their weapons tearing into its shields. The massive ship tried to flee, rising up through the atmosphere toward open space. but waiting above was the Indomitable, and the rest of the Seventh Fleet was trapped. A communication request came through. Admiral Park accepted it. His face appeared on the screen. He looked different now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by fear. His black eyes were wide and his forearms trembled. "Human Commander," he said, his voice shaking. "I surrender. I offer myself as your prisoner. Spare my ship, spare my crew, and I will give you anything you want. Information, wealth, territory, name your price." Looked at the alien for a long moment. He thought about the message that had started all of this. The broken voice, the desperate plea, the crying for help while this creature loaded their children onto slave ships. "You asked me at 4 how many you had taken," said quietly. "You told me the number, 47,216. Do you remember?" Nodded quickly. "Yes, yes, I remember." "I have been counting," continued. "Since the battle began, my forces have killed 46,800 of your soldiers. That leaves 416 remaining." His face twisted with confusion. What are you saying?" "I am saying that your surrender changes nothing. For every you took, one dies. That is the price. That is the only price." Began to panic. "You cannot. This is murder. This is barbarism. The Galactic Council will condemn you." Admiral Park leaned forward slightly. "Let them condemn us. Let the whole galaxy curse our name. I do not care. What I care about is this. The next time a commander thinks about raiding a colony, the next time one of you looks at a peaceful species and sees slaves, you will remember this moment. You will remember what happened to you, and you will be too afraid to try." He nodded to end the communication. All ships open fire. The Seventh Fleet fired as one. Hundreds of weapons locked onto the Dominator and unleashed their fury. The command ship's shields held for perhaps 3 seconds. Then they failed. Then the hull breached. Then the ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Overlord died screaming. On the bridge of the Indomitable there was no celebration, no cheering. The crew simply watched the debris scatter into the darkness of space and then return to their stations. Admiral Park turned away from the viewport. His face was tired, but there was no regret in his eyes. "Set course back to 4, he ordered. "We still have work to do there, survivors to rescue, cities to rebuild, promises to keep." Captain nodded. "Yes, Admiral," she hesitated, then asked, "Do you think this is over?" Shook his head slowly. "No, the Dominion will respond. They cannot let this stand. They will come for us. And when they do—" Looked at her directly. There was something in his gray eyes that might have been anticipation. "When they do, we will be ready, and we will teach them the same lesson we taught." The Seventh Fleet turned and began the journey back to space. Behind them, the debris of the Dominator drifted in the endless dark, a monument to the price of touching humanity's allies. Somewhere in the fleet, Ensign looked out her cockpit window at the stars. She thought about what Lieutenant Nam had said, about the weight of killing, about the price of protection. She still felt the burden. She suspected she always would, but she understood now why she carried it. Because somewhere in the galaxy, there were children who would grow up free, families who would stay together, innocent beings who would live instead of die. That was worth carrying any weight. The fleet flew on through the darkness, toward tomorrow and whatever it would bring. On 1,000 worlds in 100 different languages, beings spoke of what had happened. The Dominion, one of the most feared powers in known space, had been humiliated. Their fleet had been destroyed. Their overlord had been hunted down and killed, and the humans had done it all in less than a week. In the great halls of the capital world, High Arbiter received the reports in cold silence. Was ancient, even by standards. He had ruled the Dominion for 3 centuries, building it into an empire of fear and slavery. His body was covered in the scars of old battles, and his forearms bore the marks of ritual combat. He had killed more enemies than he could count. But he had never faced anything like this. "Show me the images again," he commanded. His advisors obeyed. The screens filled with footage from 4 ships burning, human fighters swarming like angry insects, soldiers falling under the guns of armored marines, and finally the explosion of the Dominator, bright as a small sun. 47 ships, said quietly, destroyed, 15,000 soldiers, dead, and Overlord, one of our most decorated commanders, killed like an animal. His advisors said nothing. They knew better than to speak when was in this mood. "The humans did this because of insects," continued. "They threw away lives and ships for creatures that are not even their own species. Why? What did they gain?" One advisor dared to respond. "High Arbiter, the humans have protection treaties with several species. They seem to take these agreements seriously." Turned his black eyes on the advisor. "Protection treaties exist to extract tribute. They are tools of control. No sane species actually honors them. The humans appear to be different." Was silent for a long moment. Different. Yes, the humans were different. He had studied them over the years, watching their expansion into the galaxy. They were not the strongest species. They were not the most advanced. But they were dangerous. They came from a death world, a planet that tried to kill them every day. They had evolved in competition with predators and diseases and natural disasters. They did not surrender. They did not give up. They fought until they won or until they died. And now they had chosen to fight the. "We cannot let this stand," said finally. "If we show weakness, the slave worlds will rise. Our empire will crumble. We must respond with overwhelming force." He stood, rising to his full height. His advisors took a step back. "Summon the battle fleet, every warship in the Dominion. I want 300 vessels assembled within the week. We will go to the border and we will destroy these humans utterly." The advisors hurried to obey. Meanwhile, on Earth, Ambassador Shin faced a different kind of battle. The Galactic Council had called an emergency session. Species from across known space had gathered to discuss the human aggression at 4. Many of them were outraged. Some called for sanctions. Others demanded that Earth surrender Admiral Park for trial. Stood before them alone. She was a small woman with silver hair and calm eyes. She had been a diplomat for 40 years, and she had learned that the most important skill in her profession was knowing when not to be diplomatic. This was one of those times. "The representative from the collective wishes to speak," the council moderator announced. A tall, blue-skinned being rose from its seat. "The collective condemns the human actions at 4. The destruction of vessels, the invasion of space, and the murder of Overlord are violations of galactic law. We demand—" "What did you do?" interrupted. The representative stopped, confused. "I beg your pardon." "When they raided your colonies 20 years ago," said, "when they took 30,000 of your people and sold them as slaves, what did you do?" Silence fell over the council chamber. "You paid tribute," continued. "You gave the Dominion resources and technology and promised not to interfere with their operations. You bought back some of your people, the ones you could afford, and you looked away from the rest." The representative's blue skin darkened with anger. "We had no choice. They are too powerful." "No," his voice was cold. "You had a choice. You were simply too afraid to make it." She turned to address the whole council. "Many of you have suffered under the. Many of you have lost citizens to their slave raids, and all of you have done the same thing. You paid tribute. You looked away. You pretended the problem did not exist." She paused, letting her words sink in. They sent a distress call. They did not send it to the collective. They did not send it to any of the civilized species in this room. They sent it to us, to humans, because they knew we would answer, because they knew we would fight. A murmur ran through the chamber. "You call our actions aggression," continued. "You call them violations of law, But what law protects slavers? What justice allows children to be stolen from their families? What civilization looks away while innocents suffer? She straightened her shoulders. Humanity has a simple policy. If you are our ally, we will protect you. We will fight for you. We will die for you if necessary. That is what we do. That is who we are. And if that makes us savage in your eyes, then so be it. She turned to leave the chamber. Where are you going? The moderator called. This session is not concluded. Look back. Yes, it is. They are assembling a fleet to attack us. 300 warships, according to our intelligence. While you sit here and debate, my people are preparing to fight. I have more important things to do than listen to cowards lecture us about peace. She walked out. The chamber erupted in chaos behind her. Far away at the border, Admiral Park received the news about the fleet. Captain brought him the report personally. 300 warships, Admiral. They will arrive in approximately 2 weeks. Earth Command advises that reinforcements are on the way, but they will not reach us in time. They recommend we withdraw and regroup. Read the report carefully. 300 ships against his 47. Even by human standards, those were terrible odds. No, he said. Blinked Admiral. I said no. We do not withdraw, we do not retreat. We stand here and we fight. Sir, with respect, the odds. The odds do not matter. Stood and walked to the viewport. In the distance, he could see 4, slowly healing from the attack. Ships were bringing supplies and refugees. Construction crews were beginning to rebuild the ruined cities. If we leave, they will burn this world again. Everything we fought for will be lost. They will learn that human promises mean nothing, and every other species watching will learn the same lesson. He turned to face. We are not just fighting for the anymore. We are fighting for something bigger. We are showing the galaxy what it means to have humanity as an ally, that it means something, that it matters, that when we give our word, we keep it. Understood, she had always understood. What are your orders, Admiral? Prepare defensive positions around 4. Call up every fighter, every marine, every weapon we have. When they arrive, we will be ready. He looked out at the stars. And contact Earth Command. Tell them we will hold the line here. When reinforcements arrive, they will find nothing left to fight. Saluted and went to carry out his orders. On every ship in the 7th Fleet, the news spread quickly. They were outnumbered almost 7-1. They would be facing the largest fleet ever assembled. By any reasonable calculation, they should withdraw. But no one suggested it. Ensign heard the news in the pilot-ready room. She looked at the faces around her, expecting to see fear. Instead, she saw determination. Lieutenant Nam caught her eye and nodded slightly. Guess we are staying, said. Guess we are, agreed. Is that a problem? Thought about it. She thought about the children she had helped rescue, about the families that had been reunited, about the promise Commander had made to that little girl in the ruins. No, she said, no problem at all. Commander prepared his Marines for the battle to come. They checked their weapons, repaired their armor, and rehearsed boarding tactics. When one young Marine asked if they could really win against such odds, just laughed. Kid, we are human. Winning against impossible odds is what we do. Besides, those made a mistake. They hurt people we promised to protect. Now they are going to learn why that was a very bad idea. The fleet prepared. The hours turned to days, and in the darkness of space, 300 warships drew closer. The final battle was coming. Admiral Park stood on his bridge and addressed his fleet one last time. They are bringing 300 ships to punish us for protecting the innocent. They think numbers will save them. They think we will run. They are wrong. We hold the line here. We show them what humans are made of. And when our reinforcements arrive, there will not be anything left for them to fight. Across the fleet, 47 crews answered with a single word. Lie. They were coming. Earth was ready. The fleet emerged from hyperspace, like a storm breaking over peaceful shores. 300 warships spread across the sky, blotting out the stars. They were massive vessels, covered in weapons and armor, built to inspire terror in anyone who saw them. High Arbiter commanded from his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, the largest ship in the fleet. He looked at the tactical display and smiled. Only 47 human ships stood against him. The fools had not even tried to run. They are brave, admitted. I will give them that, but bravery without strength is just suicide. He opened a communication channel to the human fleet. Admiral Park's face appeared on the screen. His gray eyes were calm, his expression unreadable. Human Commander said, "You have one chance to surrender. Give us the leave this system, and I will allow you to live." Did not respond immediately. He simply looked at the way one might look at a dead thing. "No," he said finally, "we will not surrender, we will not leave. And when this battle is over, you will be the one begging for mercy, but you will not receive it." Laughed, 300 ships against 47, you cannot win. "We shall see." The communication ended, shook his head in amusement and turned to his fleet commanders. "Destroy them." The battle began. But it was not the battle expected. Human ships did not fight the way other species fought. They did not form neat lines and exchange volleys. They moved constantly, darting and weaving, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. Their fighters swarmed out by the hundreds, attacking from every direction at once. And they used tactics had never seen before. Electronic warfare systems blinded sensors, making their targeting systems useless. Coordinated strikes hit weak points in the formation, destroying ships before they could respond. Human vessels worked together perfectly, each one covering the others, creating a web of destruction that was impossible to break. Within the first hour, they had lost 30 ships. The humans had lost 3. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain commanded the fleet's movements while Admiral Park watched the battle unfold. They had planned for this. They had studied tactics. They had prepared for every possibility. "Carrier Group launch second wave," ordered. "Cruiser line advance on their left flank. I want those support ships destroyed." The human fleet moved as one, a single organism with 47 parts. Every ship knew its role. Every crew performed flawlessly. High Arbiter watched his fleet being torn apart and felt something he had not felt in centuries: fear. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "They are outnumbered 7-1. His advisors had no answer. The humans were not supposed to be this dangerous. They were not supposed to be this effective. They were supposed to break and run like every other species they had faced. But humans did not break, humans did not run. Ensign flew through the chaos of battle, her fighter dodging enemy fire with practiced ease. She was not the scared young pilot she had been at 4. The battles had changed her, made her harder, made her stronger. "Squadron, form up on me," she called. Her voice was steady and confident. "We are going for the flagship." The Eternal Dominion was the heart of the fleet. If they could damage it, if they could kill, the enemy would fall apart. It was a desperate gamble, but humans were good at desperate gambles. Led her squadron through the battlefield, dodging debris and weapons fire. Fighters tried to intercept them, but the human pilots were better trained and more determined. One by one, the enemy fighters fell. The flagship loomed ahead, a mountain of metal and weapons. Its shields were strong, but shields could be broken. "All fighters concentrate fire on the shield generators," ordered. "Everything you have." The squadron attacked as one. Their weapons hammered the Eternal Dominion's shields, finding the weak points and exploiting them. Sparks flew, systems overloaded, and finally, with a brilliant flash, the shields failed. "Shields down," shouted. "All ships, the target is vulnerable." Across the battlefield, human warships turned their weapons on the flagship. The Indomitable led the attack. its massive guns tearing into the Eternal Dominion's hull. High Arbiter felt his ship shudder under the impact. Alarms screamed around him. Damage reports flooded in. His flagship, the pride of the Dominion, was dying. "We need to retreat," one of his advisors said. "The battle is lost." Wanted to refuse. He wanted to fight to the death, to go down with his ship like a true warrior. But as he looked at the tactical display, he saw the truth. His fleet was broken. Nearly half his ships were destroyed. The rest were damaged or fleeing. And the humans were still coming. "Signal the retreat," he said, his voice hollow. "All ships withdraw." The surviving vessels turned and fled. 112 ships out of 300 escaped into hyperspace. The rest were debris, drifting in the darkness around 4. On the bridge of the Indomitable there was silence. The crew watched the enemy retreat, hardly believing what they had done. 47 ships against 300, and they had won. Admiral Park allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Then he returned to business. "Damage reports, casualty counts, and someone find me the High Arbiter's current location." Captain consulted her screens. "We lost 23 ships, Admiral, thousands dead, but the enemy losses are far greater, and the Eternal Dominion is still in the system, disabled but intact." Nodded. "Prepare boarding parties. I want taken alive." Commander led the Marines onto the crippled flagship. They moved through corridors filled with smoke and fire, fighting their way toward the command deck. Soldiers tried to stop them, but the Marines were unstoppable. They had been fighting for hours, and they were not about to quit now. Found on the bridge, surrounded by the bodies of his advisors. The High Arbiter was injured, his gray skin burned and bleeding, but he still stood, still defiant. "Come to kill me, human?" asked. Raised his rifle, then lowered it. "No," he said, "the Admiral wants you alive. You are going home." Was confused. "Home? You are releasing me." "You are going to deliver a message." Grabbed the High Arbiter and dragged him toward the exit. "You are going to tell your people what happened here. You are going to tell them what humans do to those who hurt our allies. And you are going to make sure they understand that this was just the beginning." Hours later, was placed in an escape pod and launched toward space. He carried Admiral Park's message with him. "They are under Earth's protection. Any species that asks for our help will receive it. Any species that harms our allies will face what you face today. This is your only warning." The Dominion received the message, and they understood. Within a year, the Dominion collapsed. Slave worlds rose in rebellion, inspired by humanity's example. Species that had been oppressed for centuries found the courage to fight back. The great empire of fear crumbled and died in exile, broken and forgotten. On 4, they rebuilt their world. In the center of their capital city, they created a plaza made of crystal and living wood, the most beautiful space on the planet. They called it Human Square. A statue stood in the center, a human marine kneeling beside a child. The inscription read, "Because you called, we came." Ensign was promoted after the battle. She was given command of her own squadron and spent the next decade protecting those who could not protect themselves. She never forgot the lessons she had learned. She never forgot the weight she carried. But she understood now that some weights were worth bearing. Commander returned to 4 many times over the years. The little girl he had rescued grew up and became a teacher. She taught her students about the humans who had saved their world. She taught them what it meant to have true allies. Admiral Park retired after the war. He had seen enough battle for one lifetime, but he was at peace. He had kept his promises. He had protected those who trusted him. He had shown the galaxy what humanity truly was. Captain took his place as fleet commander. On her first day, she received a distress signal. A species called that was under attack by an unknown aggressor. The signal was weak and broken, just like the one from the years before. Did not hesitate. "Set course," she ordered. "Maximum burn, we answer." The fleet moved out. A new generation of pilots and marines prepared for battle, and across the galaxy, species watched and knew, if they called for help, humanity would come. Not because of treaties, not because of politics, not because of any advantage or gain. Simply because they had called. And humanity always answered. The stars stretched into lines as the fleet entered hyperspace. Somewhere ahead, innocents were in danger. Somewhere ahead, a battle waited. But the humans were ready. They would always be ready. Because that was who they were.